Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Friday PD Live. As you can see, I am not Josh. This is George Lopez here with Celia in your LSL EdTech department. We're really happy and glad to see you here. Just as always, we have the bit.ly here located so that you can go ahead and ask any questions as we go through this. Today we have what we think will be a really helpful presentation by our math Tosa Kim. So before we get to that, though, I want to go ahead and have a little promotional commercial here for you. But before that, welcome to our LSL EdTech Stream PD for Friday, May 22nd, 2020. And I wanted to just make you aware of Digital Citizenship Academy that we have started. This is a project that we've started with our department on here with a group, with a cohort of teachers of about 25 teachers here in LSL. We had plans in place as to how this was going to happen. Due to our situation with remote learning, we had to readjust the whole academy. It was multiple sessions. It included a community and parent event. So we had to completely change that. And I really want to recognize some of the people that are participating on here, because they didn't have to continue with this during these really challenging times, and they have. So I want to talk about, we have the parent component. We actually have already had our digital citizenship sessions remotely with this cohort of teachers. The majority of them did, like I said, continue with the academy even during these tough times. And the final piece, as these teachers work towards getting common sense recognized, is to have some community or parent event. And again, initially we were going to have this in person, but we are going to have to move it to remote. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and share some of the people that are participating. They're going to be helping us out with this event. So these are some of the digital citizenship participants. These aren't all of them. I just asked them to please go ahead and throw a little bit emoji in here just for a little bit of fun so they can get recognized for their work. And also so that you as a teacher, if you need ideas or need help with digital citizenship, you may have a person at your site who is recognized, who has some information that could help you with this. So I hope that that you will reach out to them if you need additional help. So these people are also going to go ahead and help us with the parent Digital Citizenship Academy. We are planning to have our first one on Thursday, May 28th. It will be in English, and it will be from 6 to 7 p.m. This will be done through Facebook Live. There's a link here. Please note that this link is not live yet, but it will be live early next week, so that parents, community, or anybody, you as teachers, can come and watch this event. It'll be about 1 hour if you just want to get a little bit of an overview as to what digital citizenship is and how you can use it. You are, of course, invited to this, but here's the link. So on Thursday, May 28th will be the English one. And then on Monday, June 1st, from same time, 6, 7 p.m., we will have a Spanish edition of this. So the link will be the same. Again, it's not live yet. And I guess what we would like to ask is if you as teachers could help us advertise this event, because we want to touch as many people as possible. Initially, this was just meant for our families, but that's one of the benefits of doing this remotely, is that we can make an impact bigger than just our district, our community. So that's one of the positive benefits of changing this to this format. So if you can, you will get this slide deck in a communication once this live stream is complete, along with access to these promotional items, these flyers, so that if you can send this out through Google Classroom to your students, to your families as announcements, think about, your different platforms that you use. Some of you use, I know, use Class Dojo, Remind, any way that we can communicate and try to get this critical piece into families and our communities would be helpful. So again, you will get access to these flyers, so you can go ahead and attach them as a link to, and share them with families. So we really hope that you will help us with this event, and that you will help us make it successful.
George, can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
What if a parent doesn't have Facebook, or maybe they can't make that time? Like, can we problem solve that?
Yes, so great. Actually, believe it or not, Josh sent out a communication about this yesterday, and I've already gotten a couple of questions in advance to this, and that was a question that a couple of you have asked this. We have families or parents that don't use Facebook, don't have Facebook. How can they get access to it? So a couple of things. Number one is you do not, in order to watch a Facebook Live, you do not need a Facebook account. You just need that link. Now, if you want to interact during the presentation, the live stream, during the Facebook Live event, you do need an account. But to watch it, you don't need an account. So that's number one. So anybody can have access to it with this link. Number two is we will be recording this event, both of these events in Spanish and in English, and we will make sure that we add it to our remote learning website under the parent and familias tab. So that will be available there too. So hopefully that will be, that's the solution to that question that you asked and that a couple of you have asked. So thank you very much for those of you that sent us those questions in advance. All right, so that is our announcements for today. If you need any additional help, something comes up during, you have specific needs with regards to EdTech, remember that we have our website that you can email the department. We also have our office hours. Be on the lookout for those on the weekly every Monday. We send you the link and the times of those of the EdTech drop-in hours, so you can come and get additional help. And so those are two supports for you. And we're going to go ahead and move on to Kim's presentation, which is shifting into remote math instruction, our math TOSA. But before we do that, one last time on here, if questions come up during this presentation, as Kim is speaking, remember we are using the same Google form, so you can submit your questions, bit.ly/AUSD, capital L for life, PDQ. Okay, PDQ capitalized. So take note of that. It's always the same link. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and, like I said, learn a little bit more about the shifts that have had to happen in math instruction with Kim, our math TOSA. So hopefully, Kim, you are there and you are ready to take over my screen.
I am there. I will do the whole present thing in a second here.
Thank you,
Yes,
Kim.
share no. And that window and okay, so I can't tell if you can see it. Can you see it?
We can see it, Kim. Thank you.
Okay. So, mathematics, remote instruction. I want to first say thank you to Ms. Navoa, who let me basically boss her around for 6 days in her class, and all of her wonderful students who were patient with me as we worked out the wrinkles and the confusions and how everything just was much more difficult at first than we thought it was going to be. So, just like in language arts, our goal is to maintain what we have and address the most essential learnings that they didn't get before this all happened. And this is why we don't want to break the ladders of their learning and keep them stuck behind because they have holes in the skills because they've forgotten them, or we went through and tried to get everything done by the end of the year and left gaps because it just went too fast. We want them to, whatever they can get, we want them to get it strong so that their knowledge is strong going into the next grade. And for first grade, those essentials would be place value. They really have to understand that the 1 in the tens place is not 1. When they turn a page in a book, it's not page 2 and 6, it's page 26. It seems like a silly thing. We say 2 and 6 all the time. We have that knowledge. We're not really saying 2 and 6. We want them to really understand the place value, and they really need to be strong in their facts to 10 strategies to get beyond 10, and they don't get to the standard algorithm in first grade, but they really have to, the exercises in first grade are not vertical. They don't look like the algorithm, because we don't want them thinking you add this column and you add this column, so this is a 2 and a 7, and then this is a 1 and a 3. They're horizontal for a reason, so that they have to look at each number and evaluate, okay, so this 36 is 30, 3 tens, and so they break it up into 30 and 6, and then they add it to the other one, and they have to know on the other one which ones are the tens and how many that is. So there is a lot of that in Module 4. It does the same thing in Module 6, just with bigger numbers. So if they can get it really strong in Module 4, they will really not, yes, 6 would be lovely, but they will survive second grade with a strong Module 4 instead of a kind of sort of I saw Module 4, Module 5, and Module 6. So those are the essentials for first grade when we went into this. This is a list of one of the lists online that pops up a lot of the things that you can include in a digital math lesson. Bellworks, I know, is also a published item, but I'm thinking of it as the stuff you do before the bell for the children who come into the meeting early, because you can't just say, okay, it's 12 o'clock. Everybody will just blast in at exactly the same time. Better some of them come in a little early than a little late. So you can have a fun little thing ready for them to go. Go over expectations. With the first grade, that more looked like, okay, we need to have these people with their mics on, these people with their mics off. Do you have your whiteboard? Do you have all this stuff? We need to be polite to each other. It's more of an oral thing. And during that time when they're coming in, you make connections. You say hello to them. You look around the room, see what's going on. They put the learning target here. I tend to put it right before the lesson because I like to do the warm-up first. The learning target is, and the bell works and the warm-up are not long things. They have to be quick. You don't have that much time. It's got to be spent on your lesson, some kind of an application, and then an exit ticket. So this was the 2-day plan that I have been thinking about, and this is a plan that we tried out from Eureka Math. You can read that for yourself. This review, the application problem coming before the application is reviewing the one they did the previous lesson before they do the one for today to see if we can get some improvement in how they're setting it up. So the main concept development, the main lesson comes on day 1. So you have little things around it, and then on day 2, you get all this practice and talking and checking and other stuff going on. And Friday, you can see what's going on there. I've got to slow down here. Just Celia's got to tell me to breathe. There we go. Okay, so these are some of the things that might happen on Friday, especially for the children catching up on the stuff that didn't happen on the other days, because a lot of times they're not even at home. They're at babysitters, and they can maybe get on to watch the lesson, but then they're not necessarily going to take care of all of this other stuff. So Friday and Saturday and Sunday are the chances to get it all completed and in before you start again the next week with another 2 lessons. So these are the things that you might use for the warm-up and have them posted. We used Seesaw. Oh, I forgot a slide. Oh well. I'll just say it now. We used Seesaw for pushing things out, and it worked really well. I got a lot of practice. Since I don't have a real class of students, I hadn't gotten to use it much. I got much better at it. But these are some of the things you can do as those before the time starts kind of games. where they have to estimate how many balls are in that glass, estimate how long that piece of string is, say which one of those shapes doesn't belong. If there are 7 dots and you can only see 3 of them, how many are under the splat? And that thing that looks like a crossword puzzle is a hundreds chart. And without seeing the rest of the hundreds chart, they have to figure out what numbers go in the rest of those boxes. So these are the first grade versions. There are harder ones. That link, when you get this slide deck, his site has, when you get to his site, there are a lot of little things posted on his blog. Click on any one of them, and it will take you to a place where you can find links to all of these kinds of activities in PowerPoints, with instructions, with clues that you can use with your kids and have them up ahead of time. This was the activity we did. That arrow was pointing to the sticky box. It was amazing to me how many of our students couldn't get stuff, couldn't open the activity on Seesaw when we know they could do it before. So, got to tell you a story about the Jamboard. We first tried Jamboard as a way to, I don't even remember what it was, but everybody had their own frame. And it was going to be, I think it was for the application problem. There were so many kids on it that they couldn't all get on it with the internet the way it was. And they had a really hard time figuring out how to go find their name, even though I'd had them all labeled. Poor kid at the end of the alphabet, the frames were not moving very fast. So we decided, nope, that's not what we're going to use Jamboard for. At that point, we decided to go to whiteboards, because they could just, you know what? You cannot hold up your Chromebook to the Chromebook camera. So using it to check for understanding just wasn't working. So we decided to use the whiteboards, and we'll talk more about those later. But what we decided to do with the Jamboard was this beginning activity for them to have something to do before they got there. Posted one of the pictures. I had in the activity, there was the recorded message about what the question was, and then they had to make guesses, and you can see we have guesses all over the place. The correct answer happens to be 24. Some of them were pretty close. Some of them were just seeing how big a number they could get. The more they do these kinds of estimations, the closer they will start to get. This before the bell kind of activity is a place where you can put in the things that you're going to be missing because you're not going to be able to get to them. So little puzzles involving shapes, measurement, and estimation is such an important skill when you say to the children, do this problem and then check the reasonableness of your answer. What do you mean, the reasonableness of my answer? I followed the steps. It should be right. This is how they start to develop a sense of reasonableness. All right, anyway, you will get the link when you get the slide deck. This is a possible way that you might do it with upper grade students. You can just post this ahead of time. You have a timer up in the corner. You let them know what the object of the lesson is going to be for the day, basic instructions, and a little activity that they can do while they're waiting. And of course, they'll have to be ready to talk about it. Briefly, we want everything to be brief. So day 1. For the big kids, you could just have a slide up about their expectations. For the little kids, you're going to talk about, reiterate again, bouncing on the bed is probably not the most conducive to getting their work done. So we went right on to Fluency. And I'm going to have to show you this later. Those pictures of the buttons and pennies in the cups and the sticks and the, well, everything except for the Rec and Rec were all taken from my iPad, strapped with massive amounts of masking tape to a tripod, looking down on a piece of paper or a whiteboard that was taped to my desk so it wouldn't move around. And then I had to find, since I have an older iPad, I had to find third-party software. Thank you, Celia. The other one worked great, to be able to project it onto my screen, to be able to send it out in Google Meet. So I could do them together with the kids. I could be moving the things around. They all gathered buttons or beans or whatever, and they were doing it in front of themselves as I was doing it on the screen. That was the button activity. We did the cubes that looks like Rec and Recs, because doing the Rec and Recs, it was just too hard to do. So, hey, I used cubes, and what they had to do was, we started with 14, then we added 10, and they had to show me on their whiteboards how many they had then. Then I put the other 10 on, and then they showed me on their whiteboards again how many they had. The one on the left near the bottom with the pennies and the dime, what I did for that was I went into the Knowledge on the Go things from Eureka Math. And as I watched the video, I would stop it and I would take a screenshot of the pages that I wanted to use. And I put those down underneath the camera so that I could write on top of them. I listened to the whole, now this is going to take a lot of time. You might not be wanting to do this, but it really went well. I listened to the entire Fluency activity and I recorded it, and then I listened to it again and used a speech to text thing. They don't really work well for recordings, but I had my earphones on, so I would listen to the recording and speak it into the open mic on my computer, and it would start typing it for me. And then I had the transcript. So that as I had those pennies and dimes in front of me, I could, because they have such lovely ways of saying things, I could then read my transcript and translate it into Spanish as I went. I know I should have written decenas and unidades, but they didn't seem to get confused. I was speaking Spanish while I was doing this. I didn't have to translate the whole paper into Spanish. I could just, it was there, big print. I could say it in my own words-ish as I was doing it, and it worked really well. And then I would stop and pause and ask the kids to show me what they have on their whiteboard. They were doing the equations with me. I would stop and say, what comes next? Write it down, show me, and then I would do it. So they were checking their work. It wasn't just, I'm going to do this and you're going to watch the show. After the first couple of examples, I would start it and they would have to finish it and show me, and then I would finish it and show them. And they were really engaged that day. It was really getting better. So then right on to concept development. I just kept the camera up. I didn't have to switch to anything else. We talked about, this is what they were going to do. I didn't make a big deal out of it, just said it once. This is what we're going to do. And then over here on the left, you see what it is from the Knowledge on the Go, which I took screenshots on, and I had them posted up on the side of my computer. And then I, again, did the transcript. And then over here on the right was me doing the first exercise with the kids. This one I just did. The next one they were doing with me. Well, they were doing this one with me too. So again, I would stop, I would wait, I would pause. What comes next? We just finished the 17 plus 3. What's our next equation going to start with? 20. Good. Okay. Yeah, you got it. That's right. Good. And on we went. And the whiteboards were just so much easier than anything else. All of them could just hold them up. They didn't do it all at the same time, but they would finish and they would hold it up and put it right near the camera. The students who hadn't picked up their whiteboards yet, they just did it on a piece of paper and held it even closer to the camera, and it kept them all engaged. So then I shut down the camera and I went to the computer, and I had gone through the work that they had turned in on Seesaw the week before, not the week, 2 days before, from their application problems. And I had picked out and I made screenshots of all the ones that had actually done it, cut off the names, and I put them in a slide deck. And this one on the left was one that I did. And I talked about that one first. I said they have no idea if it's mine or another student's because nobody can see anybody else's stuff. So I talked about the model, about the labels, about the equation, and about the answer in words. One of the things they were doing at first with their application problems was they would copy the entire question and then record the entire question with the answer. Or they would write a sentence, and write out once más cinco son 16. They would write out the numbers as words. So I said, okay, so we found this one, and you can see how this student did all this. And then I showed examples of other work that had been completed. And this was after this was the second time we had done it. So you can see some of them have already fixed the not telling the whole story problem. We talked about, oh, look, the student put everything on. Oh, first time I did it, I just had these little hints, these steps in a glump, and they didn't do all of them. So by separating them out and giving them an appropriate amount of space, they had to do all the pieces. And they got better at it. This right here shows me that this student is on automatic pilot. He sees this tape diagram, and writes all the equations automatically for the tape diagram without thinking about what it is we're looking for. And then instead of writing a written sentence to answer the question, he writes the number sentence down here. So we just talked about it as we went, and I talked about each one and what was really good about each one and what was missing. Not what was wrong, what was missing about each one. And down here, this is what I'd like to eventually get to, where a student could say, oh, that's mine. And I see I forgot the labels, or I forgot the answer sentence, or I forgot, so that they can start analyzing their own work and looking at their own work. But right now, I just need them to know what the parts are supposed to be and what they're looking for. And they got a kick out of seeing their work. Again, no names. So then after we did the review from the previous one, they got to do their application problem. And I haven't gotten to look at them yet, I don't think. Nope. So this is how it looks when they get it. And this is my version of, wow, wouldn't it be cool if I could see this? Mostly what they miss now are the labels. They draw a picture with no labels. They do a tape diagram with no labels. And they need to make labels in first grade, because in second grade, when they get two-step problems and they're using the answer from the first part to figure out the second part, they need to know what part is what. They can't just be relying on a bunch of numbers and a bunch of dots. They have to know what that bunch of numbers or a bunch of dots represents. So they really need to get in the habit in first grade. I don't care how simple the problem is, they have to write the labels. Putting a name on the number tells you that it's a quantity. These 5 are the acorns that this squirrel friend received. It's not just 6, it's not just 5, it's the acorns that the friend squirrel got. That's what the quantity is. That's the difference between a quantity and a number. 5 is a number. The acorns that the friend squirrel got is the quantity. Alrighty. And in the upper grades, you might do the application problem like this. Instead of doing the review ahead of time, after they complete their application problem, you can open the Jamboard and have them work in pairs or larger groups, post, take a shot of what they did, put it in their Jamboard, write little stickies about what they see, talk about, oh, you put your labels, I forgot my labels, and they can go in and they can fix them. And if the teacher's watching and listening, which of course the teacher can still hear what's going on, even if they can't see every Jamboard, they can hear if somebody's being inappropriate or mean. So that would be a way to bump this up to the upper grades. One of the reasons I picked a first grade class is because I figured anything a first grader can do, everybody else can handle. In fact, you can handle more. Okay, I think it is definitely time for a break. And I'm going to turn it back over to my trusty friends over in Ed Services.
Kim, would you like to answer a few questions before we go on break?
Sure.
Man. All right. So go ahead, Sally. I'm going to ask the first one.
Kim, there was a question about pacing. So since you broke up one lesson into 2 days, there was a question about your recommendation. So somebody's wondering, does that mean that we should be aiming to do 1 lesson per week or 2 lessons per week?
I would say 2 lessons a week, because if you're supposed to have 3 hours per subject per week, that's language arts / ELD and 3 hours for math, that's an hour and a half every 2 days. So in an hour and a half, you can get a lesson in and get all the parts in. And it took us a while. I only went over by like 10 minutes or 15 minutes the first time. Not too bad. But we got it down. The last lesson we did, we came in under time on the first day, overtime on the second day because we had to talk about something else. But if you stay focused and you keep the short things short, I had to get a new timer to keep myself on track for things like the application problem and the fluency parts. So you can devote a nice chunk of time to the concept development. And I know a lot of people don't like scripts, but the nice thing about those scripts is it means you're not going to go wandering off like I do, bird walking somewhere else. And if in the concept development they have 3 examples, usually the third example is more difficult or has a twist to it. And the first one is easier. So if your students are really advanced, you could do example 2 and 3. If we're not really advanced, they can do examples 1 and 2. You don't have to do all 3 of them. You look at what the learning objective is, you look at what's in the concept development, and you say, I'm going to stop here because that teaches what my lesson objective is, what my target is. But one of the reasons I did this experiment with Annalila was to see if we could do 2 lessons a week, and we did. So she did language arts in the morning first thing. They had an hour break. Then they came back at noon, and we did 50 minutes to an hour's worth of math. 50 minutes the plan was 50 minutes the first day and 40 minutes the second day. We're still working on the logistics, but a lot of that was me having trouble with equipment. So the actual math part did fit within the time. So back to answer the question, my recommendation would be to try to do 2 lessons a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then save Friday for letting kids finish their stuff and you getting a chance to look at what they've done. Next.
All right, Kim, hold on. There's a follow-up question to that.
There was actually like kind of a follow-up in terms of kinder. because there's a teacher who's saying if the kinder time is only 1.5 hours per week per subject, then should they be aiming to do 1 lesson per week?
Well, the kindergarten lessons are also shorter. So they have an hour and a half per week. Yeah, I would say we'd be happy with one real good substantial lesson, but they also need to, on other days, they need to have activities that they can do without the teacher having to be there, or just enough to introduce the activity that they can do something to keep going. Because if they're only going to get a little tiny bit of math every day, or if they get like the whole lesson on one day, there are going to start to be holes. But there are things they can do when the teachers, that 3 hours or that 1.5 hours is not the total amount of time they're spending on a subject. That's the time, and I'm going to just say face to face, but I don't mean face to face. The time that the teacher is introducing new learning. However, the teacher is introducing new learning. Review stuff does not count as part of that for kindergarten 1.5 hours. So anything that's a review, like they're practicing counting to 5, or they're practicing their sums of 5, or they're counting to 20, whatever they're doing with a little video that's helping them count, that's in addition to the 1.5 hours a week. That's maintenance. Maintenance is not new stuff. So after we get done with the lesson in the first grade and we assign Zearn, that's now a review because we just did the lesson. Or if you have your kids on Prodigy that they're doing at their own pace, that's in addition to the time that you're actually providing instruction.
All right. Thank you, Kim. This next question has to do with, you kind of showed your schedule, and I think this is related to the participation logs that teachers are supposed to fill out every Friday. So the question was, yeah, if you look at that participation log and based on the MOU, Monday through Thursday should be teaching, and then on Friday, that doesn't mean that you don't it's not expected on Friday for you to do a lesson. Now, some of you are choosing to do that, but that's not what was outlined. So I think that was a question that came up is, is administration aware that Friday should be, it should be about connecting to parents, catch up, interventions, perhaps one-on-one type of stuff, as opposed to Kim,
so the catch up was not the teacher catching up students. That was, I didn't get to all my stuff during the week. I, as a student, now I need to get this stuff in before next week comes around. Otherwise, I'm going to be behind. If the teacher's going to be planning for the next week, you need to look at the stuff that they brought on. You're not going to bring kids in and analyze what they're thinking. This is all stuff that happens for maybe planning. And I'm not saying, sit down for 5 hours and analyze everything they did, but sometime you have to take a look at what they did. If I parent contact, I suppose you can do that anytime during the week. It just kind of like, okay, that's another thing they could do. The differentiation is just an option. You can either be planning, and I'll talk about this in the next segment, how to differentiate the core fluencies that are supposed to be differentiated. It doesn't mean you teach it on Friday. It means you prep how to get it together, which isn't really a big deal. Or if you are a glutton for punishment, you could have a small group if you wanted to. It doesn't mean you can't do Friday, but if you wanted to have extra time to say, oh my God, these kids are still not getting it, and you just wanted to pull them in for a little bit, that would be the time to do it as an option. I'm not saying you have to do that. Just those were just ideas that had come up talking to other people, like kinds of things that they do. But the day 1 and the day 2 are the way I would break up the lesson. Friday is just other ideas.
All right. Thank you, Kim. And we have a final couple of questions that are related, final ones before we go on break.
This might just be like a look, they're anticipating what's coming, Kim, but do you have any video of your time in the classroom?
Oh, I do, but I had no time to turn it down into something that would actually fit in this lesson. So I will scrunch it down into something that won't put everybody to sleep, and I will post it
Okay.
probably next week. I'll send it to Josh.
Yeah, perfect. And somebody was wondering if those samples that you had demonstrating were actual student samples.
Oh, these are the one on the left is just a screenshot from a little example in Eureka Math. The other three are student examples, and that one was just my doing to figure out what I would like to show you, kind of like what we're heading for. And I didn't have a chance to get those. Those were just assigned yesterday, and they're not all in, and so some of them are still working on them. So I didn't think it would be fair to put them up. They're still in draft form. But everything else, you know, usually if I show you a screenshot, it's going to be student stuff.
Awesome.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Kim. We're going to go ahead and go on a 10-minute break, and then we will see you on the other side with Kim continuing this. So
Okay.
Thank you for that, and we will see you in a little bit.
Always forget.
Do you hear that? Do you hear that on the live stream? I'm wondering. In a second, let me see.
Are you muted?
I am not muted. Will that mute this? I'm wondering.
I think so.
All right, welcome back after your break. So Kim, they are all yours when you're ready to take over the screen.
Okie dokie. Now, if I just click resume presenting, is it actually going to go back to what I was doing before?
It should. Let's try it.
Yes. Okay, is it there?
Day 2, we are set to go.
Good, okay. So day 1 was the meat of the lesson. A little bit of warm up, an application problem because it's connected usually. Happens on day 1, but the big thing is getting the main learning, the main understanding parts out. And normally, if you were teaching everything on one day, you could go right from the concept development smoothly right into the problem set. Now we have a day in between. So, and we didn't do a sprint on day 1. It's kind of intense, and the other we want to do something a little more fun on day 1 because the lesson's going to be so intense. So here is the sprinty thing for lesson 25 is called the core fluency, which works on the fluency for that grade level. The first time it pops up, you get 5 blackline masters, A, B, C, D, E. And the object is the first day, every kid gets the same one. The second day, any student who is able to complete the whole thing in 90 seconds and make no errors gets B. Okay, that's kind of not fun in a regular class, but at least there you can have folders with names on them and cross them out as they finish it, and just open up the next folder and give them the next one. That works out really well. Happily, our EdTech TOSAs have office hours, and I had got to go ask them, can I differentiate which students get which assignment in an assignment? And apparently you can. You guys probably all know this, but remember, I don't have a real class of students, so I'm just making guesses most of the time. So after you put, I think these ended up, no, they are both together. You put one in, and when you go to assign that one, you can check which students you want, or you uncheck the ones you don't want for A. And then when you put B up, you go and you assign it, and you just check the ones who you unchecked for A. They get B, B being the one with the missing add-ins.
That is correct, Kim. And if you need help on how to send out differentiated assignments through Google Classroom or Seesaw, we can definitely help you with that.
Yes. Now I know it says A here. This is it shouldn't say A. I think this is the A. Oh, this one wasn't a core fluency. This one was a regular sprint. Sorry. So all that, because the core fluency sprint was from 24. This is just a regular sprint. So this is side A and side B. And it was a new thing because they had these itty bitty teeny tiny boxes. So I went through and in preview, I put little tiny white blobs on top of the boxes. So they actually had more of a space to write. And silly me, I forgot to bring that to their attention. So only 2 students figured out that the answer goes in the space or before. If you look at number 10 and 12 and 14 and 15, they have to figure out that it goes before and not in the space. So learning activity for me. And this is actual real work here. And timer. So, yes, okay, that's going to come up. For the upper grades, you can put if you have the patience to enter a problem do a new question for every problem, you can put the sprints on forms to more accurately mimic the sprint experience. Oh, the other thing that I did here was what I wanted them to do was draw a line at the last one that they did when the timer went off, and then do B and draw a line where they finished on B. And then they could do the rest of them after we finished our math lesson, so that if they wanted to, they could post up a completed one. Those instructions were lost on most of them. They either finished it or they didn't. So that's something that we need to work on. But that's one thing that they can do, either in this version or where they have them in forms. You can have them take the test on forms and then still push out the digital version afterward so they can practice the whole thing. Because if you remember, the sprints are actually very carefully constructed to help build understanding. It's not just a random bunch of problems. They start out easy and they follow a plan and they get more difficult at the end. So they're actually good for practice once you've done the timing thing. So then we move on to the problem set, which is now disconnected from the lesson by a day and a sprint. So before I started this, I took a screenshot that I had of myself, because I'd been recording the whole thing, or I got my whiteboard out, I replicated one of the problems and took a picture of it and posted it and said, let's remember what we did yesterday. The point of yesterday's lesson was they weren't adding the tens first, they were going to add the ones first. So that was a big shift. So I wanted to point out on the page that had the two different ways of doing the problem side by side, how they did the tens first on the first side and the ones first on the other half, because that's where this problem set is going. So then I had pushed out the 2 pages of the problem set, and I had them open it up in Seesaw. I can't see what they're doing. I have to hope they're doing it. And so I wanted to work the first problem on each page with them as we went. And what the other thing that they're trying to get them to understand is it's really easier to do an addition problem if you start with the larger number. So we're going to break up the smaller number. In previous problems, the larger number had come first and the smaller number had come second. So I made a point of making the error of saying, okay, I'm going to break up the second number. Oh, wait, we want to save the larger number and break up the smaller number. So you can see where I crossed out the little arms there and broke up the 11. And I put the 10 first because, as you see where I've underlined in the instructions, and I read it several times and I had them underline it in theirs, that they're going to add on the tens first. So we write it first when we decompose the 11. So I work through them. We write the first sentence, the 14 plus the 10, and then they had to tell me what it was. And I see that over there we had 14 plus 10, yes, equals 24. Then you have to remember to grab that 24, put it at the beginning of the next number sentence, and don't forget you haven't done the 1 yet. So we've been having that discussion for the last 2 lessons, and it's starting to stick. Then before I turned them loose on page 1, I did the same thing with page 2, where they were going to add the ones first. So we had to break down the smaller number and put the 1 first, and then the 10. After I went through the whole thing, and I reviewed the instructions again and had them all circle what it was. You see my other example here did not underline or circle the instructions. Then they got turned loose, and I only put on the page that I pushed out the ones I wanted them to do. If I have to send them out the whole page, we circle the ones they're going to do. And I didn't put up page 2, but it had 6 on there, and the 2 at the bottom had stars instead of numbers. Those were optional. If you really like doing this, you can do those if you want, but they only had to do the 3 here for that. And then, of course, they're supposed to turn it in. So for upper grades, you can just give them the instructions, tell them they have 10 minutes, tell them that they need to turn it in. And apparently I forgot a closed quote there. But it's basically the same thing. You did the lesson yesterday, now you're going to do the practice. Then we had the debrief. This is where I brought back the Jamboard. I went through the suggested debrief questions, and they were a little hard for what these guys have been doing so far, so I just modified it and I posted the question. And when it says problem D, they might not get page 1, problem D. They might end up looking at the wrong one. So I also put the problem on the page. It was next to the instructions. It got moved. And then they had to answer which one were they going to start with, the 26 or the 14. You will notice a lot of 14s. Well, 14 is actually the one that we would want them to break up. We want them to start with the larger number and break up the second number. It really doesn't matter. But it is easier to add smaller things to larger things. But that was the question. Most of them didn't get it. So I'm going, okay, probably should work on that. But in the grand scheme of things, if they're breaking up one and adding it to the other, maybe it's not a hill I need to die on. However, the other answers, the 70 and the 44 and the 90, were not answering the question. So we didn't understand it. The problem had been covered up when they were looking at it. They were just having fun making stickies. But this debrief gives me an idea. I don't know who they are. It doesn't matter, but it lets me know that most of the kids knew that 14 was one of the numbers. The other ones, we got 120, 1, 2, 2, 3 26s in there. I don't know where the 24 and the 23 came from, but it gives you an idea. And it's easy, and it went. Oh, and this is what I wanted to tell you. I found a way to turn off the Jamboard when they're done. I'm sure somebody else has already figured this out too, but I was so excited. So I did not share it with everybody to begin with, because I wanted to show them what they were supposed to do, instead of having them scribbling all over the page while I'm trying to talk or make my sticky. So I turned off the sharing settings. Only I could write on the Jamboard. And so I went through the steps. I read the question. They read the question back to me. We talked about it a little bit, but I didn't give an answer. Just wanted to make sure they knew what the parts were. And I said, and here's the sticky, and this is where you would do it. And I came up with some, I didn't put my answer on there because I didn't want to sway it one way or the other. Then I went into Drive and I went to the Jamboard and I turned the setting on to edit. The next thing is, though, they have to know that they have to refresh their screen. So that's the next thing we got to teach them, is how to refresh their screen. Apparently there's a button on a Chromebook that makes it very easy. And apparently they're supposed to have known this, but it's easy to forget things when you're at home. So once you've turned on the edit and they refresh it, they can start posting. Then when it's time to stop the activity, you go back in and you take away the editing privileges and put it just on view, and you say, oh, and by the way, refresh your screen again, and then they're cut off. In fact, if they doing this as with an experiment, if you kept doing it, if they didn't refresh after a while, it wouldn't let them post something anyway. So you can set it to view only, explain what you want them to do, give them editing privileges, and then after the time, set your little timer. When the time is up, go back to making it view only, and you actually have something that I can show you. Otherwise, this would have looked like our first activity where they had completely destroyed my wish to provide you with an example with the little ball estimation thing. All right, so that was the debrief. Same kind of a thing you can do with the upper grades. You can just give them the instructions here. You can have them work in pairs. You can put, instead of just one page with a question, you can put a couple of them maybe make the first one required and the last one required, and the last one being, what did you learn today? And then if they want to, they can pick any of the other ones that looks, oh yeah, I have an opinion about that, and they can stick it up there. They can also read everybody else's answers and say, oh, I never thought of it that way. That's how we're going to get some kind of conversation going between the students. And of course, you would be hearing what they're talking about so you can monitor language, and you would want them to identify themselves on the stickies that they write so that you know who's saying what, or so that they know who said what, or you can say, no, I don't care, just put your sticky up there. So the exit tickets, this time they'd been kind of loosey-goosey, just do it and turn it in, which of course meant they could do their exit ticket forever and get all the help that they wanted. But I need real information. So I said, okay, I am timing it. I put the timer up. You have 5 minutes. And in 5 minutes, you have to turn it in. And I'm going to know who has turned it in. And you see below a screenshot of the place where the assignments come up. And this was even after 10 minutes. I only had that many. And then I took a screenshot. And I said, I'm making a screenshot of the people who've turned it in because they're the ones who have finished it on time. The rest I don't know. I mean, it's still going to count as work, but it's not going to count as an exit ticket because it's not telling me if you knew it or if you had help. Of course, somebody could be helping them there. Anyway, so that's the only way to know if they're turning in an exit ticket within the 5 minutes is to go look at the assignments coming in on Seesaw. As you see, I have not mentioned Classroom because I have no experience with Classroom and students. I've only used Classroom at PD to push material out, never had ask anything to come back. So I have no idea what that looks like. I mean, yes, I listened to the PD, made sense when I heard it. You don't have a real class to practice with. It's gone the next day. So Seesaw has been absolutely a delight, except that it has decided that even if I were assigned as co-teacher, it would kick me out at least once a day. In fact,
We'll
I
work
have been, what?
I said, we'll work on that.
Yes, I went back. I was going to show you the pages of the students who had turned in their application problems and open them just live in another tab for you. Nope, it said you do not have permission to look at this page, even though I could do it yesterday. And I was able to get the stuff from yesterday's things because the application was 2 days ago. But as soon as I went back an extra day, it said, I have no idea who you are. You can't come in. All right. And obviously you could do the same thing with the exit ticket. You could also put it on a Google form. Hard to draw a picture on a Google form, I think. Or if you draw it and then you post it, yeah, you could draw it and post it. So they could do that. I'm sure there are many other ways you could do it in Classroom. So that was the end of the lesson. Now, anybody who knows me know that I love Zearn. And I like Zearn because it's a good review of what they just did. Unfortunately, it's only in English. And before I tell you about this page, I want to show you what Miss Navoa did. She went and did a screencast of the whole of the concept development part of the Zearn lesson for lesson 25. This was actually lesson 23. And while I don't know if it's after she did the screencast, she added her voice to it, or while she's watching the screencast, while she's watching it and screencasting it. I don't know how she did it, but it was amazing. She dubbed Spanish over it, and I'm going to let you get to hear about 25 seconds of that. Everybody cross fingers.
Kim, they may not hear the audio, so just wanted to let you know about that. But again, when they get access to the slides, it'll be fine.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. That's right, because of course it's coming out of the other speakers. Alrighty, Anyway, she did that all in Spanish. When you hear it, you're going to be absolutely amazed at how wonderful that was. Here's the really good part. So you get the lesson in first grade, math is in Spanish. They get the lesson in Spanish, the regular lesson in Spanish. They could go to Zearn because Zearn tries to control the vocabulary so that non-native speakers, if they've done the lesson in Eureka Math, can follow along because they know what they recognize in Zearn what they just did. But we know that's not necessarily true. So she's made this recording so they can listen to the whole lesson and see how it is that's going to work. It's also really super for parents to watch so they can see, oh, this is why my kid's doing it this way, if they want to. The only problem is that to do this, you have to be able to get from, you see these little dots down here. Each one of these dots is a place where the video stops and the student has to enter, and it will not go on until you do something. Therefore, Annalila had to actually put in the answers. So any student who wanted to could be playing the video and doing their Zearn and just plugging in the answers. So we try to separate, we assigned the Spanish version earlier in the stream so they can just watch it and get an idea of what's going on in the lesson so that when they see it in English, they've already had the lesson in Spanish for real. They get to watch the lesson in Spanish in Zearn. So they're now getting a math review and an ELD lesson at the same time when they do Zearn for real. The problem is we're not getting them to do the Zearn. So I'm going to go back a slide. So what we had to do yesterday was I had to remind them, I've pushed out, you can go and get the notes, and if anybody needs to know where to find the notes, I will tell you later. I can't get into it right this second. But I downloaded all of the notes for this module for mission 4, and then I just pull it up on the computer and I take a screenshot of the notes for that particular lesson and I push it out. So what the students were doing is they would open up the notes and just do the notes without doing Zearn. And they'd just do the exit ticket without doing Zearn, which means they weren't really getting a review. So I went through again what they need to do. They need to look to see that they're on 25. They need to do the number gym, the math chat, the Tower of Power. And then I also want them to, let me move that. Oh, I can't move that. Whoops. I want them to take a screenshot of the top half of that page and send it in to show me that they have unlocked the next lesson, which means that they have actually completed lesson 24 and gone through the whole thing instead of just doing the notes and sending them in. We'll work on that. Then over here, Annalila opened this up so we could show them how we can see if they're doing it or not. And these 4 students, this is not everybody, but these 4, you can see that they haven't done any of it for mission 4. They were still in mission back here in mission 1 and mission 2, but we just skipped them up to mission 4 because we wanted to follow what we were working on. And then somehow this darling little child here managed to skip all the way up to mission 5. The punishment for going ahead is you get sent back to the beginning of the previous topic because you can't set kids to a specific lesson. You can only set them to a topic. And she's even skipped all the way up to module 5 somehow. Most recently, it even says here module 5. So she needs to be reset back to module 4, back to the right topic so that she's doing it. Okay. And we did actually set them to the right topic. I don't know why they're back at the beginning of module 4. I might need to help Annalila fix that. Alrighty, so that was Zearn. That was what took us a little extra time because that's supposed to be their homework once every 2 days. They do their Zearn that goes with the lesson we did. Now they've got Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday to make it up. And that one we saw. And Friday is just your time to prep lessons, to see what they did, look at their work coming in, pull a group if you want to. that's when you don't have to provide more lessons. So these again were just some suggestions. Check the things that you asked them to do, figure out what you want to review in the next week, what you want to clarify, and any kind of extension you might want to do. Because with the ability to assign different stuff to different kids, if you have got kids who are just, probably bored with what you're doing, you could always give them something more fun, but more difficult, more challenging just for them, because now we know that it can be done. So, in summary, 2 days per lesson. Try to stick to the Eureka Math stuff. It addresses all the standards that they need, and it goes in a logical order. And it has help right there on how to present the lesson, except, I'm sorry, grade 6. But if you go on to the knowledge on the go part, you can watch the video of them teaching it. You could record the video of them teaching it, because they have an amazing turn of phrase when they're working with children that they cannot see and cannot hear or watch what they're doing very well, to how to not tell them the answer, but to ask them a question and pause and then ask, did you do this or did you do that? The debriefs that they give are just amazing. And if you wanted to, you could just show the video. Like I said, I made the transcript of the video because I really like the way they set up the lessons, and then just looked at it while I was teaching. I pretty much stuck to it, except that I was doing it in my Spanish. And break it up with the big heavy stuff on the first day, and then the practice and review on the second day. You can put in a fun thing at the beginning of each lesson before they come in, so maybe that will help attract them to come on time. And keep up on looking at the reports so that you know who you need to nag or how you need to fix things to present them differently. And then we have some very wise words from Annalila. I'm going to just not read the whole thing, but basically, we need to be patient with our students for many reasons, one of which is that, internet is kind of spotty. That's why one of the reasons Jamboard the first time was a mess. Whiteboards, paper and pencil really worked keeping them more focused. The day we got the whiteboards going, oh my gosh, they were just, you could see them working. They were not jumping on the beds. They were not calling out to their parents. They were actually working. And then they could show it to you. And just showing it was so much faster than take a picture and send it to me. Be aware that they might not all be home. She likes to have their mics on so that you can monitor what's going on in the surroundings and help them concentrate. And it's really good to try other stuff, but her biggest suggestion is keep using what's easiest for you and your students. This is a math lesson, not the newest, shiniest toy out there lesson. And we tried the Jamboard and it worked for one thing and it didn't work for almost anything else with first graders. Might work better with upper grade kids. So these were her considerations that she wanted to make sure I presented to you. And you are the one who is impacting these students more than anything. I know they've got stuff going on, but if they smile when they see you, that's really, when they see you come in, that's what we want to see. You have the impact. And if you have any questions, there is the form, and I'm going to turn it back over to George and Celia so they can ask me the questions. And otherwise, thank you very much for your patience. And that's the presentation.
All right, Kim, we do have a question on you for you. One of them, thank you, Mr. Raines, for being patient on this. You asked this at the beginning, and we were saving it till the right opportunity. But he wanted to know is there a way to access the Learning Lab Guide practice video from a teacher's account? What it says is what I've done is I've created.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, anyway, go ahead.
Yes. Okay. It's almost 11. I'll try to do this really quickly. Open up a new tab, find Zearn. Go in. Okay, so how do you find those things so that you can make a recording? Remember, if you just show them the recording, they're not going to learn anything because it's just listening and copying. They don't even have to do anything. But we'll pick first grade and mission 4 again and go there. And of course, this is all recorded, so you'll have it. And right here, all this stuff over here that says teacher-led instruction, that's their sales pitch to get you to buy their workbooks. This is where we are. Independent digital lessons. Student notes, that's where you get those to download onto your computer so you can now have them to send out. But the place to get the math chats and the learning labs are down here. So by lesson. So if we go down, that was lesson 23 that she had done. You click on any one of these and you will see what the students did. And it is done just the same way that the students are done because, well, that's what it is. So if you're going to view it, you have to do all of the questions. You click on that, up it comes, and here we go. Volume's off, but there you see the same one that she recorded right there. If you're in a hurry and you just want to see what's going on, you can go up to each dot yourself, put in the answer, and then I'm going to skip all that and just go to the next dot and do that. If you just, if all you want to do is see what the kids have to do, but that seems like a waste of watching it. But yes, you can see the whole thing from there. Let's see if I can get back. Yes. So you can see any of the other things too. I've had questions, as long as we're here, I've had questions about the 2 fluencies. Students, all the students will have a different number gym. It's the only adaptive part of Zearn, and it's usually very easy. But the more they get correct on the number gym, the more difficult the next number gym will be. This blast thing or whatever is the second one, the sprints, those are the same for everybody, and those are based on whatever the lesson is.
All right. Thank you, Kim, for that. We just want to, as we pass on to the last question, wanted to let you know that some of you have asked some very specific questions that have to do with math that we may not know, but Kim, definitely being our math TOSA, can answer for you. So please contact her directly, through email, and I'm sure she'll be glad to help you and provide that support you need with regards to specific math topics.
George,
yeah.
do you have the form collects email addresses, right?
That's correct. We will make sure we get that to you.
So yeah, if you send me the spreadsheet, I will try to answer and reply to the ones that I don't remember answering. You might want to mark those or something.
Sounds good, Kim. Here's Celia with the last question.
So there's a teacher wondering if you can recommend maybe a more efficient way to translate the knowledge on the go into Spanish. So she notes that right now she feels like it's a really slow process. And so she looks like she's listening to knowledge on the go and simultaneously translating into Spanish by hand. Afterwards, she makes a video with the Spanish script that she translated. And so I think she's just wondering if you could maybe offer the way that you do it to see which one maybe is more efficient.
Okay, well, first of all, my Spanish isn't good enough that I'm going to record myself doing that. But the way I've been doing it in English, because I want the transcript, is, well, the first time I just recorded the whole thing and then I just listened to it and wrote it down by hand. The only other way to do it is to find a speech to text app, and there are a bunch of them out there. Google even has one in there. I've got 3 already. I haven't found one that is perfect. The problem is that it really has a hard time typing text, listening to a video or a recording of any kind, because especially digital recordings do not really represent what your voice is actually saying. It's like paint by numbers for your voice. So the algorithm that's translating what is being said into typing doesn't always understand what's being said because it's been flattened somewhat. When I got the 3 apps, I don't remember what they are because I've gotten rid of some of them. I tried the same piece on all 3, and all of them pretty much gave me, I don't want to say gobbledygook, but there would be places where you'd get a really good sentence and it would skip the beginning of the next sentence, and then you'd get who knows what. And then it would going back to behaving itself. So that was actually more work because I then had to go back and listen to it and correct everything. What ended up, the only efficient way is to pay money and have somebody do it for you. That's not happening. And who knows when that's coming back when you ask for it. But so what I did was I have earphones at home that don't have a mic on them, and I listen to the recording. I record it so I can go back and forth. I screencast it. Of course, you can also just go back and forth on there. So I listen to it, and then I'll pause, and then I will just say it into the speech to text blob on the word processor or whatever window has been opened. And I will just say it with my own voice because it seems to be much better at picking up what you're saying in your voice. And then I'll listen to the next piece. Maybe I'll do it simultaneously for a while, but then I get lost, so I have to stop and go back. So if I just stop every bunch, that seemed to work the best for me. It is still going to take you at least as long to do it as it does to listen to it, because you have to listen to the whole thing. And you can't really set it up to just like do it overnight. Gosh, anybody finds one that does that, can do it from a recording, or can do it right from the screen as it's saying it and put it somewhere else, that would just please tell me. But the high quality ones are probably not free. So I trust me, I have been looking for a more efficient way to do this. So far, my most efficient way of doing this is I get a surprise from Annalila in my mailbox that says, "Oh, look what I did." Going, "Wow!" But it's not efficient for her. It took her at least an hour to do that one little learning lab thing. Took an hour. So, and every time she made a mistake, she went back. I think she was castifying it at the same time as it was happening, so then she had to add it on top of it. Okay, that's all I have about that one.
Sorry about that, Kim. Let me go ahead and share my screen. That is the last question that we have. So I'll hand it over to Celia here.
And before we send you all off, there were just a couple of reminders that have come up that we wanted to reiterate. One, that if you did miss anything that was shared today, that this is being recorded. And so you're, of course, welcome to look at our remote instruction website later today. Hopefully we can get that up. And you can always rewatch the part that you missed. Also that some folks